Welcome to another Civic Punks video from the UN Public Service Forum. And I'm here with my good friend Robyn, who just did the repertoire, the wrapping up of the whole entire...
A very fancy title.
I know.
General Rapporteur of the Forum.
Well, you earned it. You really brought the house down. It was a fantastic final way to wrap everything up. What was the biggest thing you were hoping to get across with what your final thoughts?
So the purpose of this talk was to reflect back on everything that had happened at the forum and look forwards to what should happen thereafter. And I'd been given a bit of a brief, which was that I could go off script based on what others had done in the past, which was quite encouraging. But based on the first 2 days of the forum, I think one thing that was very important to me was to create a space that was for a little bit more honest reflection, because there were some great conversations, particularly in workshops during the forum, but the main plenary conversations were quite both scripted in some cases, but also avoiding the issues that we were facing and sort of slightly more ministerial type statements. So I think that was quite important to bring in a little bit more heart. And there's also a couple of topics that I'm always keen to put on the agenda in these types of space. So one is the importance of carving out space for what I would say something like collective healing and collective imagination, because I think particularly in these domains where people are very used to thinking intellectually and logically and kind of go from crisis to crisis, they don't necessarily engage the part of themselves which is processing the grief and trauma that all of us carry actually when you're trying to fight through a broken system. So I think that was one element. And then I also really wanted to bring in this angle of how people in the audience should be trying to think about shifting power relations. And two angles there that I wanted to bring out were thinking about the next generation and how power can be shifted to them. And then also, given who was in the room, because it was predominantly a Global South delegation base, how those relationships between what gets called South-South collaborations, those relationships can be strengthened and people can feel empowered to do stuff without always having to lean back on traditional power structures, which, as we're seeing at the moment, are falling apart.
I think one of the things that's been a bit of a learning for me is this whole South to South isn't just the global South. Like Uzbekistan is included in that, which is obviously north of the equator, but really this idea that it's trying to create spaces for this collaboration between countries that aren't sort of your OECD countries, which I thought was quite interesting. And I mean, one of the things I'm actually quite curious about is, I agree, one of the things that really jumped out at me was there's some key things that were in the ethos but weren't being talked about, weren't being said. And then you said it, and I think there's sort of this like, hey, someone said it kind of moment. I am curious what would have happened if you had been in a position to give that talk at the beginning versus the end, and whether that would have changed how the conversations played out.
Yeah, I think I had more confidence by the end for two reasons. One, because of what hadn't been said, and two, because he hasn't asked me to plug him here. But Derek did a really good job of creating a WhatsApp group, and by extension, in-person community of so many people who'd come in internationally to join the forum. And then by 2.5 days in, you really feel like you've got a family is maybe the wrong word, but a group of people who've really got your back and are sitting there in the audience. And that gave me the confidence to say the things. To be honest, I had pre-drafted most of the elements that weren't the bullet points of the UN asked me to summarize of the sessions in advance, and I had barely changed that. So it was the message that I wanted to share, but the absence of those conversations made me feel like it was the right thing to bring in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it was a fantastic way to end the forum. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how these conversations ripple out.
Yeah.
Moving forward, and also the relationships that we were able to build and weave together throughout the forum. And honestly, anytime I get to hang out with you, Robyn, is so much fun. So super excited to figure out what our next adventure is going to be.
Absolutely.
To figure it out.
The next UN forum, we are keen to be there.
Please sign us up. Amazing. Thanks, Robyn.